Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me for pricing, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we're discussing a fun watch launched in 2022 that revives a portion of Breitling's 1960s dive watch experience. Inspired by the reference 2005 slow chronograph, this is the Breitling SuperOcean 44 dive watch with turquoise dial. Now, this is not a chronograph like the original, but it does embody a lot of the original's style and period ambiance. It's a large watch, but it doesn't look it. At 44 millimeters, you could be forgiven for mistaking this for a 42. It's rare for a Breitling to wear smaller than its rated size, but that's actually the case. And at 12.7 millimeters thick, it's reasonably thin for a dive watch. 50 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip with a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. I'm going to pop open the clasp, throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and I really feel like this wears like a 42. Yes, it's a 44, but take a look. It's thin. It'll fit underneath the cuff. The lugs are nicely shaped and fairly short. On neither side is it overlapping my wrist. So I could recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 15 centimeters in circumference. It's really quite comfortable. The strap is a lovely piece that's partially integrated into the case. You can see how there's a little bit of a recess designed into the case flank so that the strap can be really close hauled to the case, and also so the pivot centers of the lugs can be close, very close to the case flank, far inboard of the lug tips. By having the pivot centers further inboard, it becomes easier to wear on a small wrist. And also by closing up to the flank of the case, it's a more integrated and modern look. You can also see that little revetment perfectly matches the shape of the strap, so there's no impediment to the movement of the strap. A lot of times straps that are closed up against the side of a case, they don't want to move. This has a full range of motion. There's a little molded textile pattern in here with a center strake. It's a thick piece of rubber, which bodes well for its longevity. There are little pockets on the bottom to allow the wrist to breathe, and several pre-scored segments to allow you to cut to length and cut to suit. But it's also important that these new Breitling clasps are a lot better than they used to be. Whereas we used to get holes for strap tools, now we get 15 millimeters of sliding push-button adjustable length. 15 millimeters in and out with several steps. It allows you to fine-tune the fit even on the fly as your wrist expands or contracts. The clasp is a mighty piece of thick-gauge steel, single fold, now has twin trigger release. We're seeing fewer and fewer Breitling clamshell clasps, and I'm glad to see that. These twin trigger release clasps with the micro adjust are the way forward for the brand if it wants to stay in the mainstream of luxury. Now you can see this one hasn't been enjoyed all that much. Pre-owned watches sometimes find owners who pay the money and then they lose their nerve, and they're afraid to scratch the watch, so they sell it with the packaging still in place. So if you've ever wondered how intact is this used watch I'm seeing, well, there you go. There's your evidence that it has never been refinished. It's a nicely profiled watch. It's not as massive as Breitling's of the past. As the lugs come to a nice tapered point, we have these elegant bevels that run end to end. There's satin finish on the lug hoods and the case band. We have here a Breitling B on a crown that features media blasting and polished as a screw-down crown. The watch is 300 meters water resistant. The outer face of this bezel is polished, but the recesses are media blasted. And then we have a ceramic insert that's nice and scratch resistant. This is a 120 click bezel with an extraordinary quality of click. It sounds good. It feels great. Among the finest I've experienced. This is not one of the most expensive dive watches I've ever encountered, but for bezel feel, a make or break factor for a luxury dive watch, this one is flying colors. Turquoise perhaps being the color in this instance. Passing with flying colors. How's the loom? The loom is good too. You can see the bezel pearl is large, and all three hands are loomed, which is nice because during a dive you really need to know if the watch is running. If you have even an inkling that you might use it as a backup dive timer, you need to know that it's running, and Breitling does right by its owners here. The dial's also nicely dished. It has good depth to it. Outboard we have this scale reminiscent to the original chronograph model, and it has a little bit of a slope to it. It's dished, it's concave, and then there's a step down to a lacquered turquoise center dial. That is the Breitling terminology for this color. Turquoise lacquer with applied, faceted, and polished rhodium-plated indices. So it's much more upscale than the historic models that would have featured printed dials. Now, of course, we know 300 meters and 1,000 feet are not exact equivalents, but everyone, including Rolex, does that, so we're just going to push the I believe button. Turning over to the opposite side, there's nothing to see here, but inside we have a Sellita SW200, which is Sellita's version of the tried and true ETA 28242. So it's a bidirectional automatic winder, 38-hour power reserve, 4 Hz beat rate, stop second, 5-position adjustment, and a COSC Swiss chronometer certification. Chronometer is the highest grade of SW200, and we have that here. We have that hacking or stop seconds function. We have vintage-inspired pointed crown guards. And then the movement inside is very, very tough. I can attest to that. It's also very, very accurate, and it's very, very serviceable. So unlike a lot of modern dive watches like those from Omega and Rolex, you can have this serviced anywhere. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.